Hey, I'm happy to be here with Nipun Mehta, good friend, founder of ServiceSpace, and how the Dalai Lama said, the unspoken hero of generosity. Did a good job.
Good job, Jesse.
I'm happy to be here, to be in conversation with you. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What we always do is like, we're gonna do a quick tune. So we do
Okay.
one brass circle, just tuning.
You have to
Get
coach
into
me how to do
frequency.
it. I'm
Yeah.
ready to do
I
it.
gotta
yeah.
do it with you now.
What do I, okay,
Pull it out,
okay.
put it in. Now we are connected in one frequency.
Beautiful.
And it takes, because we have him sitting in traffic, he's traveling all the time, everybody tries to be relaxed, and we all know sometimes it's not so easy. And it's a good introduction to tune with somebody, you know, you feel the vibration.
Yeah.
And it should be done in families, should be done in schools, should be done in offices. And but that's not the theme today, it's not the tuner. Our theme today is you as a human, you on your mission, and I would just like to know what is the driving force behind you?
Well, I think it's about tuning to love, really.
Yeah.
I think for me, my journey has really been about finding that through line of love.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of noise in the world,
Yeah.
and through the noise we have to find the signal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think love is the signal. And that's been, and you grow in love, right? Like I think it's a journey. So
Yeah.
it's been from where I was 10 years ago. I hope I'm more loving now, and I hope I can be even more loving in 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
So yeah, that's been my intention throughout this journey. I come from the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So my story is that, you know, I got tired of all the greed. I got tired of all the sort of incessant rat race that was just one after another after a third. And I realized it's not so much what you have, but it's who you become
Mm-hmm.
through what you do. And so that journey has completely changed me and got me focused on doing acts of service for the world and supporting other people in doing acts of service, acts of love.
Acts of love.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like what you told us, for example, what we integrated at Lovetuner, the act of kindness. It's such a simple thing,
Yeah.
but everybody can do it, and it also helps. And the reason why we are doing it as a company is because we want to raise the energy,
Yeah,
the vibration. And I
vibration of
think
love.
this is where it should go.
Yeah.
And either it's in what you're doing or how you support people in your service,
Yeah.
or monetary, you know, like it, whatever it is, I think. And people should also be encouraged to do it.
Yeah.
And maybe you can explain a little bit more what happens to people when they get generous, you know, like, because it changes them. You know?
Well, what you're talking about is that on your website, you now accept kindness as a currency,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which is so amazing. I mean, it's unbelievable. We live in this world where money equals wealth,
Yeah.
but actually money is just one form of wealth. There's so
Yeah.
many other forms of
Yeah,
wealth, right? Stillness of the mind is a kind of wealth.
Yeah.
Community is a kind of wealth. Kindness is a kind of wealth.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I that's like, to me, that totally just made my day when you guys were accepting kindness as a currency. We did this event in Berkeley,
Yeah.
where it was like this conference, and the ticket for the conference, you could pay financial currency, but you could also do 7 acts of kindness. You could do a 5-minute selfie and offer creativity capital. You could do 8 hours of silence, you know, and you could volunteer for the day. So all these different kinds of capitals, all these different kinds of wealths are integrated. And I think when we do that, we realize that generosity is not a luxury sport. It's not that those who have can give.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people say that to give, you need to first have a lot.
Yeah.
But then people used to tell me that too. They're like, why don't you go and make a lot and then you can give a lot? And I said, does that mean that I was born bankrupt?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
means
for
you
sure.
start with 0, then you accumulate a lot,
yeah.
and then you can give. And I was like, no, I don't think we're born bankrupt, because we all have the capacity to love.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
to align with
Yeah,
that love.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
what the Lovetuner
Yeah,
is doing,
yeah.
right? And so in some sense, how do we not just align in a particular moment, but how do we really start to lead a life where we're constantly bringing it back to that vibration of love.
Exactly.
Through our actions, through our thoughts, you know, and through our community engagement, through our relationships.
So, like, when we talk about what old people are doing, is actually they start off like you get a great education. You had already a plan. You should be already a billionaire, flying private jets, and having the fifth IPO with a big tech company. But you decided differently, and you're a very happy man. And everybody who meets you is like, your smile, the way you are. You're not praying something and doing something different. You are what you are, and everybody feels it. There's no BS. You're like, I got it right away. I got it in our first long telephone conversation. Everything we had. So Nipun is the real deal, and so this is why I think what could be interesting for people to become actually something like you are in a certain way, when they let go, you know, when they let go of this belief system where we're all trapped in, you know, like where people start like giving, or even on a smaller level, you know, like the service level that you said. I think this is where everything lies in, and even in a family, I think this act of generosity is a never-ending thing, and it always comes down to loving somebody or loving yourself too. You know,
absolutely, and it feels, you know, it feels so good to be loved, right? And then you're just one hop away from giving that experience to somebody else.
Absolutely.
I remember many years ago I was in India when I was very young, and I had gone back with one of my, you know, I'd gone back a first trip back with my family. And I had a friend from kindergarten, and he had got a new sort of motorbike, and he wanted to show off the bike, right? So he takes me for a ride, and India's roads, you know, there are all these potholes, and you want to slow down before a pothole, but these are two young teenagers, right? What do? He accelerates, and I'm in the back, and I tell him, I said, look, I'm going to throw up. If you keep doing this up. He's like, no, you're not. I said, no, I have an American stomach now. I can't do this. He's like, no, you're not. And then I throw up after a while. As I throw up, now we're both totally lost. We don't know what to do. You know, no mom's here. So what are you going to do? And this guy, I remember so clearly, this guy stops, and he was on his bicycle. He sees that these are these two confused kids. One of them is just thrown up, and they don't know what to do. He kind of gets off. He goes to a nearby stall. He takes out a lemon from his bag. He cuts the lemon in half. He borrows like a knife from the stall, cuts the lemon in half, and he gives it to me. And it was, you know, the citrus, of course, is I suck on it and it makes me feel better, right, after you throw up. But years later, I thought about it, and I was like, wow, you know, he didn't introduce himself. He was not my Facebook friend, not a Twitter follower, you know. He's just a human being. And he just did something just for love. And it's still, like so many years later, I'm still talking about it. I don't know how to get in touch with him. I will probably never see him again. Even if I saw him, I wouldn't recognize him. But it left such a beautiful imprint on my consciousness, and it inspired me. And I realized that, like, how many people have a lemon, and if they have a lemon, and you cut the lemon in half, how many will take the other half home? And there are many people whom I've stayed with since then, for whom even a lemon would be a lot, and he might have given me just half of what he needed. And he just gave it so effortlessly, without any strings attached. And I look at that and I say, I've been on the receiving end of that, but how can I be that for other people? You know, like I want to give that experience to you, to everybody. You know, I want to be that guy, not just that receives the lemon and tells a story about it, but that actually creates these stories.
But it just reminds me, because you said this lemon story at the Awakening Circle we have been last month. You told the story about that ServiceSpace is still like a lemon stand, how the idea came up. And I mean, this is something so beautiful. To understand if something just comes out of an emotion, like of a deep heart feeling, and not like of a calcul of like, you know, this is what we're gonna do and this is the exit strategy, where it's just like, this is, I wanna serve. Maybe you can tell a little bit more what really ServiceSpace is doing, how big you guys are already, and how like you work worldwide, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing organization actually.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's been a real privilege. ServiceSpace started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We started by building websites for nonprofits, and then once we did a lot of websites, we said, and the web was maturing, we started asking deeper questions,
Yeah.
and we said, well, what else can we do? We started building web portals. So, for example, we thought there wasn't enough good news in the world, so we have a portal for just good news. YouTube had started, so we said we should do some videos just for that are inspiring and also have an action related to it. We call that Karma Tube. We said, how do we create more kindness in the world? So we created a portal with a smile card game that's Kind Spring.
Yeah.
And then we went along and we said, well, a lot of people were getting tired of just online engagement also, and that compassion was triggered much more in offline spaces. And so we started to do a lot of offline projects as well. One of the most popular ones, or more famous ones, is Karma Kitchen, where you walk into a restaurant. It's a pop-up restaurant run by volunteers, and you walk in and your check reads 0. It's 0 because someone before you has paid for you, and you are trusted to pay forward whatever you want for people after you. And most people think, no way, it's like, oh, this is too much love, it's turning to love. It's like, our typical economy is greed tuning, not love tuning. And this is like all about love. And so you say, how can it work? And it turns out it does, right? People respond to love with greater love. And then subsequently was studied at UC Berkeley in a seminal paper, and the title of that paper was Paying More When You Pay for Others. So it became, and that was just one experiment offline. We do these awaken circles, which we're going to have tonight, where it's just how do you create value that starts to go outside the GDP, that really questions the dominant paradigms thinking that greed, selfishness, self-centeredness is what makes the whole world turn. I don't think it does. I think love does. I think compassion does. I think kindness does. And I think these are regenerative resources. So with, if I have 5 pencils and I give you 4, I'm left with just 1. But if I smile at you 5 times, doesn't mean I have less, right? It's a regenerative resource. The more you smile, the more you want to smile. The more you tune to love, the more you want to tune to love, So how do we create a world in which we are organized around these deeper regenerative principles, regenerative wealth? And I think that's a great design question, especially for the younger generation to hold.
Absolutely. And I mean, one guest that you had last time in San Francisco was also where he talked about this investment group that goes beyond the interest rate that are set by federal banks, etc. And so there's a lot of space out there where actually institutional investments and money in general can do a lot of good in the world. Yeah,
absolutely. I think traditional money can definitely do good, and I think if it's understood as a spectrum of wealth, it can do even more good. That this form of wealth is good for these kinds of things. This form of wealth is good for these kinds of things. This form of wealth is good for these kinds of things. But if we try to box everything into one and manipulate the whole system and our whole psyches to sort of be funneled down into this one thing, I don't think it's helpful. And I think it's a design flaw that I think that we as society will learn to come out of that. And I think there's a lot of people waking up to it, even with financial capital.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of amazing folks.
I mean, I think it was never so clear also in society, because now we have so much knowledge. It's not only meditation, it's not only a belief system. It's really fundamental impact of meditation. On our behavior, even on our physical levels, So I think there's so much awareness there. People are so aware about what they eat. They know way more of what is not good for them anymore. People know that cigarette smoking is not healthy. So we are way further ahead than we have been 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I think to make a conscious decision for love in our period of time is possible, And you don't have to be oh wow, that sounds gay, or something like this. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but it was a long time ago, and a long time ago, man could not talk about meditation, could not talk really about love tuning or something like this. You know, it was like something where you don't want to talk about it, but now it's like it's on the table. You know,
Yeah.
like you literally need to look away to make the wrong decisions again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you cannot live anymore like 20 years ago and say, oh, we believe that that's okay for the ocean, that's okay for our air. It's
Yeah.
not okay. You
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
I think this is why this consciousness is so important.
And I think compassion, as so many times, it gets seen as a sign of weakness. But then you see people like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Dalai Lama, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not nonviolence is not a weapon of the weak. You know, it's actually a tool for the courageous, right? To be kind, to be loving, to be unconditionally generous is actually phenomenal.
You know what I would like to talk to is how would you see it to motivate young generation? And I'm not talking about kids. I'm talking about the kids who game, who have like weird values, and who don't have an intact family that corrects these values, which are like totally off. You know, they're also synthetic. They're not real.
Yeah.
How would you motivate them to even have this sort of generosity, of love, like?
I mean, you know, I think the answer to that question is that we have to do it in a contextual way. I don't think there's a recipe that you can scale tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's one of my favorite stories of this guy named Julio, who he's getting off the subway station in New York and gonna go and grab a bite, and this kid comes up to him with a knife and he says, "Give me all your money," you know, and Julio's like, "All right, I'll give you my wallet," and he gives him the wallet, and then as the kid's about to go and run, Julio says, "Hey kid, come here, man. It's a little cold. Do you want my jacket too?" And the guy's like, "What do I do? Do I like go grab his jacket?" You know, and he grabs his jacket. And then he's about to go again, and Julio says, "Hey kid, you know, I was about to go grab a bite. Do you want to come to dinner with me?" And they go for dinner. And they have this beautiful chat, and at the end of the meal, the check comes, and Julio says, "Hey kid, I would treat you, but you have my wallet." and this guy gives him the wallet back, and then Julio asks him for one more thing, and he says, "Hey, would you mind giving me one more thing?" He says, "What?" He says, "Can you give me your knife too?"
Wow.
This is the knife that he had robbed him with, and the kid gives him the knife.
That's amazing.
And this is the power of love. And you have repeated stories of Gandhi and all these social change legends, Martin Luther King, that have shown this even at scale. But I think what we end up doing is we hear a story like that and we say, how can I, like if you create a recipe for creating the next Julios of the world, it's not going to work.
Not going to work.
Right?
Yeah,
Like it depend. You can't go in to everyone who comes in with a knife and say, "Hey, I'm going to convert you, and here's my wallet, and here's my jacket, and come to dinner with me." It doesn't work like that, right? It's contextual. So how do we create a population that is tuned in to the living, live, dynamic context? And if people are tuned in to that frequency, if people are tuned in to care, if people realize that we are interconnected in a very deep, fundamental way, then I think you can start to really have an appropriate response to that situation. And I think we need a population. We need young people, old people, everybody to sort of tap into that, to care, to feel their interconnection, and to learn to respond to that in a skillful way, in a compassionate way, in a courageous way, to react out of fear, to react out of greed, to grab, to accumulate. That is not courageous at all. That's actually, by my definition, that's cowardly. It takes a lot more courage to be kind. It takes a lot more courage to be loving unconditionally. But I think it's possible. All these people show us it's possible, and I think now we need to bring it to the Julio level. Right?
I think so.
Not just the Gandhis of the world.
No, I think so, because like what you're just saying is like it takes people like Julio that is this hero, you know, and I think now is the right time to do it, you know, because like
to be the change.
To be the change, and it was not, and with all the downside of social media and gaming, whatever kids are connected with, I think this generation now has the opportunity and the tools to really be this change, because it's so fast. You know, like it's our communication is so fast. You know, the information spreads so fast, and it can also spread in a positive way. And this is like that.
Exactly. And we talk about this idea of Gandhi 3.0. So Gandhi 1.0 is like this one-to-many network, which is a TV model, broadcast. Gandhi 2.0, which happened in India, was Gandhi's successor. He walked from village to village, and it's one-to-one, right? And Gandhi 3.0, and one-to-one is more like the telephone model, and Gandhi 3.0 is many-to-many, and that's more the internet model. Now the thing is that we've figured out how to use many-to-many for profit. We have figured out how to use it for protest, but we haven't really figured out how to do it for love. And the advantage to a network that is bound by love is that things start moving not just at the rate of your fiber optics connection, but it actually starts to move at the pace of love.
Exactly.
And that's infinitely greater. If you have a network of greed where everyone is saying, I scratch your back because you scratch mine, that's only going to go so far. If you have that same network with love, that's going to be way stronger because the boundaries are not there.
Absolutely.
Right? I just do it for you because you're a human being and there's life in you, and I it's unconditional. And you then pay it forward to somebody else. That person pays it forward. Trust skyrockets. Productivity skyrockets, and that community, I think, is that bond, that network, that sort of web of love. Once that is activated, it's invisible. But once that is activated, it's like the mycelium network, this fungal network under the ground that you don't see, but that's what allows so much else in the world to kind of flourish. Absolutely. And I feel like that network is what we need to do. As you tune to love, as I tune to love, but then as we come together in that way, that web of love is what will allow really new innovations to emerge and will allow us to respond in a contextual way like Julio Diaz did. Not in the one-to-many world, but in a many-to-many world. And I think that gives me tremendous hope because that's like, man, like it could be everywhere, it's like, it's amazing.
I mean, I just have to tell anyway, all our listeners and fans, we have to say that they should really be a part of an awakening circle, because I have been there. I knew you and maybe 2 other persons. And you go away and you really feel family. So it's something what is so unconditional, and this is, I think, what people should create, and I think this is why what you're doing is so fabulous, and I think a lot of people should really check out what Nipun is doing. It's amazing. He's not only a good friend, he's not only family, but he is one of the good guys. And this is why we're so honored to have him here and that he told us his story.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for all that you do, man. Oh, there it is. Now my mic will. Oh, I still got room. Thank you. Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, man, it's an honor.